here's our second reading for week 3 of the class. Russell's little pamphlet, An Outline of Intellectual Rubbish. Um, well, this is a pretty interesting essay. Um, I think it was written in 1943 while Russell was living in America. Um, there's a whole story about Russell's sojourn in America during the 40s, having to do with he had a job at City University of New York and was fired before he even started because some people thought he was immoral, and he ended up actually in Philadelphia lecturing at the Barnes Foundation in Marion. But Albert Barnes, being the kind of person he was, he eventually got into a conflict with him. But in any case, okay, here's his Outline of Intellectual Rubbish, and it's got maybe one of the greatest first lines I've ever read. Man is a rational animal, so at least I have been told. That's pretty good. And of course, it's Aristotle who said that man was a rational animal, and it's Russell who's, casting some doubt on that. He let me just make this a little bigger. He makes a good point about why Aristotle said that 2,500 years ago. And I think Russell's essentially right. Aristotle said we were rational creatures mostly because we were capable of rational thought, like in mathematics. And so Russell makes a lot of, the fact that we could do addition, but that maybe this is no longer a very good reason to call us rational. But in any case, it's just a setup, really, to a long list of things that are, some of which are unfair, and maybe, I don't know, but a long list of irrationalities on the part of human beings. And his big target here is definitely religion. There's no question about it. That Russell thought that religion was responsible for many, many irrational beliefs and acts on the part of human beings. This thing about Franklin here, where Franklin was condemned because in the invention of the lightning rod, that it was impious because lightning is sent by God to punish, and you shouldn't change the course of a lightning strike because it's somehow against God. Stuff like that. And it just goes on and on here. The scientific and moral, what he would consider irrationalities on the part of people who are upholding religious belief, and take it for what it is. It's a long list of irrationalities, or what Russell would call irrationalities, and it's hilarious and funny, and take it for what it is. I think that that's one part of the essay, and then at the end, there's something that I think is really, really worth looking at. And maybe, I was glad to find it, because my intuition that reading Russell's essays, reading Russell's work, would be a really good way of doing a critical thinking course. That was really encouraged when I came across what he says at the end. If I can find it, I think it's on page 22. If you'll just give me a moment to find it. And here it is. On page 22, after indulging himself in this litany of irrationalities on the part of human beings, he actually gives his advice on critical thinking, which is really, again, I think this is kind of the reason that I thought this could be done, having a critical reasoning, critical thinking course entirely based on some of Russell's work. And this is something really to think about. I think this is what I gave you in the study questions on this to think about. Russell says, to avoid the various foolish opinions to which mankind are prone, no superhuman genius is required. A few simple rules will keep you not from all error, but from silly error. So Russell's really giving us his rules for critical thinking. If the matter is one that can be settled by observation, make the observation yourself. Aristotle could have avoided the mistake of thinking that women have fewer teeth than men by the simple device of asking Mrs. Aristotle to keep her mouth open while he counted. He did not do so because he thought he knew. So if something you're thinking about is something that can be determined by observation, actually make the observation, rather than think that you already know. That's pretty good. Pretty good advice. That is, if it's something that can be settled by observation, make the observation. Second one, many matters, however, are less easily brought to the test of experience. I mean, this is something that's been brought up already, I think, in terms of the class week one. If, like most of mankind, you have passionate convictions on many such matters, that is, ones that cannot be brought to the test of experience, there are ways in which you can make yourself aware of your own bias. If an opinion contrary to your own makes you angry, that is a sign that you are subconsciously aware of having no good reason for thinking as you do. That's a really interesting claim. If someone maintains that 2 and 2 are 5, or that Iceland is on the equator, you feel pity rather than anger, unless you know so little of arithmetic or geography that his opinion shakes your contrary conviction. That is, this goes back to something that he said in the first essay about opinions that are held passionately. If you hold a certain opinion on things and somebody else's opinion just makes you really angry, then Russell is claiming that that's a sign that you're subconsciously aware that you don't really have much basis for thinking as you do. When you do have a strong basis and someone expresses the contrary opinion, we don't react strongly and get angry. We just say, oh, it's too bad that person doesn't understand. The most savage controversies are those about matters as to which there is no good evidence either way. Persecution is used in theology, not in arithmetic, because in arithmetic there is knowledge, but in theology there's only opinion. So whenever you find yourself getting angry about a difference of opinion, be on your guard. And then be on your guard against yourself. You will probably find on examination that your belief is going beyond what the evidence warrants. So I don't know. I mean, that's pretty interesting. Pretty interesting advice there. And then to go on, he says, a good way of ridding yourself of certain kinds of dogmatism, that is, believing things without evidence, is to become aware of opinions held in social circles different from your own. When I was young, I lived much outside my own country, in France, Germany, Italy, and the United States. I found this very profitable in diminishing the intensity of insular prejudice. It's almost literally insular because he comes from an island, right? Great Britain. If you cannot travel, seek out people with whom you disagree and read a newspaper belonging to a party that is not yours. If the people in the newspaper seem mad, perverse, and wicked, remind yourself that you seem so to them. In this opinion, both parties may be right, but they cannot both be wrong. This reflection should generate a certain caution. That is, it's great advice to seek out a diversity of opinion. Travel if you can. Talk to people outside of your own country, outside of your own social circle, outside of your own community. And this may help us see our own provincialisms, the things that we perhaps believe because we always took them for granted to be true because everyone else did. I think this is great advice for avoiding what in contemporary terms we call the echo chamber, where we only hear opinions that agree with us and we never actually have to confront rationally people who disagree with us. What else does he have to say here? For those, this is the bottom of page 22, for those who have enough psychological imagination, it is a good plan to imagine an argument with a person having a different bias. This has one advantage and only one as compared with actual conversation with opponents. This one advantage is that the method is not subject to the same limitations of time or space. Mahatma Gandhi deplores railways and steamboats and machinery. He would like to undo the whole of the Industrial Revolution. You may never have an opportunity of actually meeting anyone who holds this opinion, because in Western countries, most people take the advantage of modern technique for granted. But if you want to make sure that you are right in agreeing with the prevailing opinion, you will find it a good plan to test the arguments that occur to you by considering what Gandhi might say in refutation of them. I have sometimes been led, actually, to change my mind as a result of this kind of imaginary dialogue. And short of this, I have frequently found myself growing less dogmatic and cocksure through realizing the possible reasonableness of a hypothetical opponent. That's a really great example. Gandhi really did think that railways and industrial machinery were bad things, and he had reasons for saying so. I think Russell's really saying there, read books. Read a wide variety of books, and make sure to read people who have a different point of view than you do, and work these things out in your mind. Great advice. Finally, he says, be very wary of opinions that flatter your self-esteem, which is great advice in general. If hearing something from somebody else makes you feel good about yourself, be on your guard, because you probably know that you have a tendency, because we all do, to agree with things that make you feel good about yourself. So watch out for things that flatter your self-esteem. I think that's pretty good. And then, well, maybe I'm running out of time here, but maybe the last thing is where he talks about fear. That fear is a great encourager of irrationality. It's just this latter part. Just look over this latter part of the last few pages of the text. It's really kind of gold in terms of an encouragement to critical thinking.